Hello, I'm Albert Ruther, and I am a computer system architect and computational engineer in the MIT Lincoln Laboratory Supercomputing Center and MIT SuperCloud team. In this module, I'm going to give you an overview of high-performance computing, or HPC, systems from a systems perspective. By the way, I will use high-performance computing systems, HPC systems, and supercomputers interchangeably. Technically, supercomputers are the highest performing HPC systems, but for our purposes, they all have very similar anatomies. All of us use laptops and desktop computers in our daily lives, and we have some familiarity with their capabilities. Based on that common understanding, we're going to use a laptop as the basis for discussing the anatomy of supercomputers. We're going to look at the main components of a laptop and then introduce the corresponding components of a supercomputer. We will discuss the similarities and differences, and that will help us understand how to better use HPC systems, including supercomputers, more effectively. So let's jump right in by looking at the anatomy of a laptop. In comparing a laptop with a supercomputer, we first need to introduce the four key components to any computing system. Let's take a look at this block diagram of a laptop. We see the following components on the diagram. First, there is one or more processors, which do the actual computation. This includes both the central processing unit as well as accelerators such as GPUs. Second is the storage, and there are a number of storage technologies here. They include disk drives and solid-state drives, or SSDs. These are non-volatile storage. In other words, the information stored on them remains intact even when the computer is shut down or restarted. There is also volatile memory, which is where applications and data are loaded so that the processors can actively work on them. These include the laptop's RAM, or random access memory, and the memory that is close to the processor, which is called cache. Third are the interconnects, which are between components of the computer as well as connecting the computer to other networks. The connections between components are depicted here with blue lines and are labeled System Network. You can consider these to be an onboard network on the motherboard which interconnects all of these components. The network interface that connects to the laptop to the internet is labeled Network Connection, and this could be a Wi-Fi interface, it could be a cell network interface, or even a wired Ethernet jack. Finally, we get to the application scheduling component, which is referred to as the operating system. The operating system is the software that manages how each of the applications running on the computer interact with the hardware of the computer to accomplish tasks. It receives requests to use different parts of the computer from the applications that are currently running, and it coordinates their use of the processor, memories, and networks. So that's what the block diagram looks like, but what does it look like in a real system? When we take the keyboard and screen off of a laptop, this is what the innards look like. This happens to be a Dell G3 laptop, but laptops generally all look the same inside. They are a beautifully integrated set of components that balance the performance and power consumption of the laptop at a certain price point. I have labeled each of the components that we started talking about in the block diagram. You can see the fans for the CPU and GPU, and you can see through the blades of these fans the chips that are underneath. Over on the right, you see a memory card labeled RAM memory. In this case, there is an empty slot to upgrade this computer with a second memory card right below the label. There's a disk drive in the lower left side of the computer. That is the common size of a laptop drive, regardless of whether it is a magnetic disk drive or a solid-state drive. The entire motherboard provides the connectivity or network between all of the components, and the Wi-Fi and Ethernet network connections are at the top right. Finally, I've also labeled the battery because it usually occupies a lot of space in the laptop housing, and we might as well point that out. In the next section, we will take a look at the system diagram of the HPC system and start comparing it to a laptop.